Welcome to Scramble Game Show. Just like the weather, we have a lot of changes in this show. Recently, you probably wonder, how come we have 1 week children playing games, and the week we have Mandarin lessons, another week we have interviews of our local guests. Well, I think this show start out as a children's education game show, but we ventured into many different things, and I think the variety actually has kept this show very interesting. If you have been paying attention, this show has been almost on for 10 years now. That is a very long time. But speaking long time, I tell you, today I'm very, very honored to have a guest. Is the camera on? The guest is a public access TV producer as well. I think something's wrong here.
He's giving you a thumbs up.
Well, this guest, he produces public access TV longer, much longer than I have been doing it, and probably he has made more than 500 or 600 shows. That is a lot of shows. And if you're interested in what this gentleman is producing, and you stay tuned, and we'll talk to him, and he will tell us. So let's welcome our guest, Mr. George Ondeck. Hey, George.
Thank you so much for inviting me to your
Well, it's
show.
all my pleasure. I tell you, you are almost a guru in the public access in this local area, and I think public access is one of the things that I think the government has done really good for people, for citizens, because I think we talk about, as America, we are a free country. We have rights to speak, and but boils down to, though, a lot of things depend on whether you have access, you have money to do things, right? And to having a studio, to have ability to speak on television, it's not that easy. So I think this Telecommunication Act that is enacted back in 1993, I guess, was allowing citizens to use the cable company's facility to produce public access is one of the greatest things. Okay, and that actually was justified because when a cable company is monopolizing a general area, they monopolize the communication media. And therefore, the law says a citizen channel should be provided. And citizens should be able to use that channel to air their opinions. And that's how you and I now become involved in public access.
That's true.
Right. And I just spoke to my audience that you have been, doing this for a long time.
Almost 17 years.
17 years.
Yes.
Wow, that is a long time.
My first show was with Councilman Bill Schmidt, who was a councilman in Peekskill.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember that.
Wow, you got good memory. I mean, one of the things that I have problem with is sometimes I do forget who has been on my show sometimes.
Well, in our both youthful age, 39 plus, I think I'll say tonight, we do have moments of forgetfulness. I think that goes with age,
right,
and maybe with experience too.
I'm sure you are much well known than I or anybody else in the public access here.
That.
But I still think we should go through a little bit, your background. Let our audience, particularly my audience, generally our families, sometimes children, and I would like to have them really know about you. So tell us a little bit about your background.
What do you want to know?
Well,
where do you want me to start from?
You are a local Westchester, resident for all of your life?
71 years.
71
I lived
years.
47 years in Yonkers. And 25 years in Peekskill, almost 25 years. And they were both poor cities. I don't come from a rich family, F.A. My father was only a common laborer on the New York Central Railroad. He put track down so people could ride trains to New York City. But what I learned from him, that the value of an education is very important. So I served my country. I served in the Vietnam War. I almost died in the Vietnam War.
Wow, that's...
Yes, I'm a disabled veteran. But I took advantage of the GI Bill. And I went to college for 4 years. And I got a BBA in Business Administration from Pace University. And FA and my audience, they're going to be shocked to hear tonight that before my experience in college and in the Army, I was one of the most shyest persons you wanted to meet. I was afraid to speak in public.
Well, that speaks for, good things about military. And military can change and train a person sort of from a personality point of view quite well. And a lot of people do, tell me their military experience changed their life.
Well, my military experience taught me, and I fought for this flag, and I almost died for my country. It enabled a poor boy from Yonkers to go to college, get a college education, go to speech class where you were required to do a 3-minute speech.
Right.
And I was deathly terrified of doing that. People are more afraid of that than going out on their first date, from what I've heard.
Yeah. Well, I too also, not in this country, but I served as military service also. And I do appreciate that experience, because I think the discipline part of it really, really is helpful. And I think it's not just physical, but I think even mentally, you really gained quite a bit. You are more tolerant, you are more adaptive. Okay, and these are...
You're more worldly because you've seen the world. You realize that in this country, and with Cablevision and providing this access to us to speak to the people, and I speak in many different areas on my cable TV show. I have politicians on. Good politicians. I pick who I feel will serve the people the best. I may be wrong in some cases, but it doesn't matter what party they are. If I feel they're a good person and they really want to serve the public,
great. That's great.
That's how I pick my political guests, by the way.
Yeah, well, I do the same.
And I've been a Democrat in my life, and I've been a Republican in my life. And I would say I'm moderate.
Well, tell me a little bit. You said you are a registered Republican, but you were also registered as a Democrat before, right? All right. That usually, that sort of change must be triggered by something. Would you, be willing to share that?
Well, I'm not. Well, let's go with extremes in both parties then. I don't believe in an extreme liberal on the left who believes everybody should get everything for nothing from the government. But again, I don't believe in extreme right in my party, my present party, that would take basic needs such as a veteran's pension, 1% cost of living away. I think the moderate is more better. In the middle, a moderate Republican or a moderate Democrat. And I like to see people more in the middle. I don't like to see extremes.
Well, generally, when you have a two-party system, you really do have to have some compromise. And people, call it the middle or not. It's compromise makes things sort of moving. But nowadays, seems to me, it's getting difficult to have or to reach the compromise in the federal level.
Especially in Washington.
Yes.
And that is a shame, because the people suffer then. When we get a threat of bankruptcy of our budget, and I know we're $17 trillion in debt, but that would raise our debt ceiling throughout the world, put America lower.
Yeah.
I mean, there should be more compromise with the president and with the Congress and in both houses of Congress.
Right, and also have to have that willpower to really deal with the hard problem, and you really look into sort of future as a long-term problem, not as every 4 years you go through an election. That's all you care, right? So well, okay, on this show, I started out really as a children's game show.
Yes.
I much more when I retired first time. I retired 3 times, but I was thinking about what a person should do when you retire, and I thought, well, the best thing is to somehow work for children. Okay, I mean that's the continuity you want to really sort of have as a human. And so I started with the children's show, and the game show actually was quite well received, and we sustained a long time as a same game show that it lasts so long, almost like this what's his name, Wheel of Fortune, this is Sajak.
Yes, my wife and I watch him every night, as well as Jeopardy, by the way.
Right.
I mean, Griffin.
Yeah.
Merv, who
Merv
died,
Griffin, yeah.
became a billionaire
Right.
because of those 2 TV, and they seem so simple.
Oh yes, yeah, and some people even tell me that the scramble game show that we have, it's actually far more interesting compared to Wheel of Fortune, because it's more challenging to the brains. Okay, more challenging in the sense that it's also very good for a TV show, because the excitement, because everybody can play at the same time, rather than you sort of program the sequence and so on. One, another person. This kind of aspect actually is good for a TV audience. In fact, I have filed a patent on my show or on this game. It took me 11 years.
Wow.
I just received, the patent on this. The reason it took so long is because the patent examiner is used to deal with games that are made of dice and cards and the little things, And what I have done, although we do use that to play games, I actually transformed into a magnetic card so I can put it on the board, show it on the board, and then the audience can watch. But I actually extrapolate this a lot more into a futuristic interactive TV show.
Wow.
That when this kind of electronic arrangement made, and then people watching, not only in this country, could be worldwide, because envision the internet now allows people to interact.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Like my show goes on YouTube
Right.
all over the world.
Right, exactly.
So I'm not just a local Westchester or Putnam show.
Right.
And that is great with technology
Oh, yes.
today,
Yeah.
and the computer. And from what I've heard, you have a computer background with IBM, and I've researched that you have many patents. I bet you didn't know I knew that.
Right. I mean, that's in my sort of first career. I worked with IBM at the research center. IBM Watson Research is
Yes, fine
it's a
company,
fairly well
international
known
business.
research center. Those good old days in IBM, the researchers there really has a lot of freedom. And I think our budget is quite protected as a tradition that is, no matter whether it's a recession or not, I think the research budget usually is maintained. Therefore, we don't have too much concern in the early days, those days. And that's the reason I actually stayed. I mean, my official retirement with IBM was 31 years. That's a fairly
Wow.
long career. And I graduated as a electrical engineering major, but in the IBM career, I worked on a lot of things. Certainly in technology, in chemistry, in material science, and end up computer science. no place, okay, even universities would not probably give you that kind of opportunity to switch. There is cross-disciplinary type of things you usually can do with colleagues that are, sort of a mix, but jumping so, wildly from domain to domain, it's very, very difficult. And that really was the environment I had enjoyed. And I worked on, like phosphorus for CRT screen, which is chemistry, materials. And I worked on, of course, building display devices. That's technology, engineering, and so on. Okay.
F.A., look at what a transformation the internet has done to the world. People in countries such as China or Russia or the Middle East can see and interact with people from all over the world.
Yeah, that's...
And in Ukraine,
yeah.
And people can see if their life is not good, they can change it. And I think that's one of the greatest things about
the communication capability that today the world sort of has really does give people power. This empowered people, and that's why people say spring this, spring that, right? Because people can spring up because the communication capability. So internet is almost become a sacred technology.
Governments want to shut it down,
and
from what I've
and
heard.
of course nowadays people are worried we will lose them, whether this free access or internet will change. In this country, as you know, many people are very concerned because there's movement to make the internet just like an old telephone company. As you know, we went through telecommunication that good old days in AT&T,
Crank up phone in the old days.
and they monopolized the whole country, right? And then we break them up, right? They become, so-called Ma Bell, become 7 Baby Bells, and so on. And then they, form and integrate back again. This is a problem. And if we lose that, and you won't have that kind of a, sort of empowering for people to be able to speak their minds.
Public access is great because as well as I, 2 or 3 great media companies can control the world or control a country, and it's tremendous that Cablevision or these other cable companies
speaking about that law is good in a way but they justify it on the basis of a monopolizing company must take some resources out, offer to people.
That's great.
But this becomes a dilemma for producers like you or me, because if the company has monopoly, therefore you have access, and then you can show only in that monopolized area, okay? So you are limited. If the company doesn't have a monopoly, they would just kick you off and say, well, we don't have the obligation to offer you this public access. So in a way, we are vulnerable, right? We might have access, and access is limited, and we might lose access because now the monopoly situation's changed. So the real good law in this sense, if the government understands, the public access is just like freedom of speech. If you really want to honor that, you want to honor that from the basic principle. So you should decide this law should apply and interpret it. Doesn't matter whether you have monopoly or not. It really takes a percentage of your sort of revenue or resources. In other words, if you are a big enough corporation, you must provide a fraction or percentage out of your revenue to the public.
That's good.
Right? Then you do not have this restriction concern that monopoly, it means, okay, if Cablevision only is in Peekskill, we can only produce something in Peekskill, that's very limited. right?
Effie, but you already talked about your game show and getting a patent, and it could go worldwide. So we're not limited, thanks to YouTube, the Facebook, and Twitter, and a couple of things I want to say tonight. A couple of things have had a big influence on my life. One recently, you said you're retired, but you're not retired. You're doing this show where you're putting information out to people, and I follow your show. I don't know if you know that. You've had some very influential guests on your show who make a difference in Westchester County. I know you've had County Executive Rob Astorino
Oh, yes,
on.
he's my favorite public officer.
And you know what? He started out as a public access TV producer and sports.
Yes, he's the media person,
And then he wound up on the Christian Broadcasting Network with Archbishop Dolan, I believe.
I
did
see.
you
That
know
part
that?
I don't know.
Yes.
My wife
And
actually is
he
a
was a
faithful
person-
listener to Christian
He was
broadcast.
a person who's only a short fella, 5'6". He defeated a Goliath, Andy Spano, who said nobody could beat him. You know, he was so popular, and he had the a majority party in Westchester County. But this man persisted, and he kept going. He tried once and lost. He went the second time, and he won because he appealed to the people. And I think some interesting sayings that I guide my life about is, yes, I can. I like that saying. I think our president says that. You have a lot of negative naysayers in the world, but yes, I can is a very important thing.
And also, you really have to be sincere when you say that.
Yes.
And you have to deliver when you say that.
And I just recently read a book, and you may want to read that. It's called Four Doors. I don't know who the author is, but Effie, I feel today is the first day of the rest of my life, and there's many, challenges I still want to succeed
So
at.
this Four Doors,
Yes, I may go back to school for journalism and go for Mr. Rooney's job on Channel 2 News. By the way, speaking of cable TV, someone graduated from Cablevision Channel 12 News and has a very big job with CBS News. I don't know if you've known this.
No,
from Westchester
which person you're talking about?
County, Mary Calvi. She's the news anchor for Channel 2 News, and she started out with Cablevision News 12.
Oh yeah, I think News 12 has done a tremendous job and has really improved tremendously over the years that I've been watching.
And another thing I've done in my life, and I think you know about it, I'm an activist.
Yes, you are.
I don't take no
I know
for
you
an
also
answer.
care about animals and so on.
Like you care about children, I figure a lot of the people need a voice. They're afraid to go to a city council meeting or a school board meeting. And if someone doesn't do it for them, nothing happens in our society.
Activists in the media sometimes being sort of casted as a bad term, you know. But I think, you know, in a democratic society, you must have activists.
If we didn't have activists in 1775 in America, we would still be living under King George III. He put a tax on tea, and the people in this country revolted against that tax.
And today we don't think too much importance of tea, but tea is so important. Not only about this United States Revolution, you know, tea basically is the reason that China was, you know, ruined, invaded by 8 countries. You know, the British, why it goes to China?
See how,
you know, it's because tea.
Wow, I never knew that. You educated me tonight.
So you know, China, this Qin dynasty, of course, that time their GDP is biggest in the world, and they peaked around 17 something around those time, and they were prosperous, and their tea and everything, all export, and they demand only paid in silver. It is when the British and French realized they ran out of silver, then they came to China to negotiate and try to, then they realized they, instead of negotiate, may as well just take it. That's how China was sort of at that point. I must say that diplomatically they're naive. They have always been a big country, always feel they're middle of the world. They never worry about it. Now these people come in with battleships and guns they never seen before. They learned, but it's too late, right? So this recently I wrote an article comparing the American history and the Chinese history the past 250 years. It really made me thinking. They all started, right, the revolution. But I tell you, American Revolution, very lucky for us, it lasted less than 20 years.
America's
It's
only
complete.
about 250 years old.
Right, exactly. I used 250 years to review
Yes.
this process. And our revolution is completed then. From then on, we simply, grow. We annex Texas, we annex California, we annex, Alaska, we annex Hawaii.
Didn't we buy them too from? And we bought Manhattan Island
Right.
from the American Indians.
So, from a historical perspective, United States really was very lucky, and it's almost like a life experience. Oh, the person born lucky, and it's always just.
I was poor as could be.
Right.
But I decided I wanted more in my life.
Yeah.
I know one way you could get it was through education, and the military service and me becoming a disabled vet enabled that.
Right.
And I didn't pass it up. I went for that.
Yeah.
And you don't know how proud I was at the age of 32 to get a cap and gown from Pace University.
Oh, you get ratchet from Pace?
I was the first person in my family to get a college education. And again, a great radio announcer once said, "Your influence counts. Use it." Too many people lead lives of quiet desperation. They work in a office. They want to do more in their life, but they're so programmed that they don't speak out, they don't speak, or they don't try to do things. I still want to be a journalist. I want to be a novelist.
Yeah.
My life is just beginning. And
Right.
I'm 71
That's
years
very
old.
reason I persist. You persist on public access, and I
Yes.
encourage our audience and the whole residents in the area to join us.
F.A., another thing I feel very strong in is our feathered friends and our hoofed friends who can't speak up. And when government agencies put out a ruling that 75 deer must be slaughtered at the Teatown Preservation or Reservation, I think it's an outrage. And I spoke out in the print. I do columns for a local newspaper.
Yeah.
I also spoke out at public forums.
But what solution did you offer then?
My solution was you feed them. You do not destroy them. Also, I felt that the thesis that they said they had too many deer at this Teatown
Overpopulated,
was wrong. It's an open area, 1,000 acres. They said there was 75 too many. How did they base that figure?
Yeah, that could be
And we
certainly
just went
debatable.
through one of the worst winters ever. Where
Well-
was there? They said one of the reasons they wanted to kill the deer was they were eating the bark and the shrubs, and it was more important to keep bark and shrubs than creatures that God created.
Well, on that, it certainly is debatable. First of all, this number 75, so on, is questionable.
And they wound up only killing 11,
let me sort of play your devil's advocate.
Okay, go ahead.
You are pro deer, but also there are people certainly pro, open space and the nature and so on. If the nature does not sort of contain the population, eventually the dear population will grow, beyond the
But over
limit,
the thousands of years.
Now, hear me out.
Okay.
We are living in a suburban, area and so on. And Teton Park and this are reserved for, open space.
And
they're
animals
limited
and
space.
bird
Right.
life.
So just based on sort of natural, sort of development, the deer population could be overpopulated because there's nothing to really, other than weather, nothing is
Doesn't
really.
God create the creatures on Earth?
Yeah, but then we have predators to
natural-
take care of that. We don't have lions in the Teton to take care of deer.
We don't have fences there either. So this survey done by Cornell University, I think it was 4 or 5 years old. How do they know that's accurate? What happened this year? It was one of the coldest winters ever.
Yeah.
And what else did the deer have to eat but the bark and the shrubs?
True.
And through
But
natural selection, this would all come back.
the natural selection or the limitation of population growth is usually because